Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to another movie review. And I am yet again taking a look at a horror film. Last time I did that, of course, we had Hellraiser Judgment, which, by the way, perfect masterpiece, best movie, 10 out of 10. I loved it. You really nailed that one, guys. We'll make another one. But this time, I'm taking a look at a horror franchise that I don't think has had its fair shake. Is that a thing you say? A fair shake? It didn't have its time in the spotlight as much as I hoped it would, because I loved the original film and I really do like the second and third ones. But these are very much cult horror films. If you are a big horror guy, you know what these movies are and you probably watched them, and most likely you really either like them or love them. So of course I'm talking about the fourth movie in the Hatchet franchise. This one's not called Hatchet 4 though. This one's called Victor Crowley, which makes more sense as a title because as these movies went on, Victor Crowley didn't really use that hatchet too much. You know, kind of like Saw, where Saw was like, all right, you're not even using a saw anymore. Why are you even calling it this? Well, they called the last one Jigsaw, so I guess they're kind of doing the same thing here with Victor Crowley. They're just naming it after the main bad guy. So Victor Crowley, of course, played by Kane Hodder, main bad guy of the Hatchet series. He's a guy, he's deformed, made fun of his entire life when he was a kid. House burned down from a bunch of kids playing jokes and stuff. His father comes in with a hatchet trying to break down the door to save him, but he didn't know little Victor Crowley was on the other side of that door, and wham, right in the face, dead. But he comes back to exact his revenge on the swamp that he lived in. And that's the backstory of Victor Crowley. Pretty good little backstory. It's better than just like he's been picked on, then he died. You know, there's a little bit of something, you know, a little tie with the hatchet, and he had his father and whatever, and they build towards that in the last three movies. This one, straight up, they just say, screw it, we have a bunch of people, Victor Crowley's going to show up, murder them all, because the second and third ones, especially the third one, actually try to build some sort of a mythology with Victor Crowley. This one just says, screw it, have a bunch of people show up, and Victor Crowley's going to come back and murder them. That's it. And there's even a moment in this movie that I really dug, that a character said, oh, we have to figure out like a way to kill him, okay? Maybe this voodoo chant or whatever that brought him back to life. Maybe we can use that. And then they say, screw that, and they deal with him in different ways. And I really like that. This movie is a lot of fun. I'm just going to tell you straight up. It's a lot of fun. I will say one thing that it didn't annoy me. It more just bothered me a little bit. This movie really tries to add way more comedy and way more humor than the other movies. The other movies had its fair share of humor and tongue-in-cheek, you know, kills and whatnot. But this one, when it comes to humor, it is straight up parody levels of humor. So much so that it even got Dave Sheridan, who is in a lot of the parody films. He was in Scary Movie 1. So they got a lot of people that are comedy, maybe not comedy people, but a lot of people here just telling jokes, cracking jokes, especially a Dave Sheridan guy. He's all around this movie just cracking jokes. Even the way he's dressed looks like goofy as hell. But so this movie is way more of a comedy than any of the other ones. At least I think so, because while there are some really funny scenes in Hatchet 1, 2, and actually Hatchet 2 was the one that had a lot of funny scenes. But not as much as this one really tries. And that's not to say that this one isn't funny. It has its moments. It definitely does. A couple of moments that were really funny. Dave Sheridan, even though I talked about him like I was being negative towards him, I'm not actually. When I was watching him, I was like, oh, this guy's good. You could tell he's a comedic performer, and he does well with the stuff. You don't get to know the characters too much, but that's not a problem at all, really. They're all like stereotypes and archetypes and stuff like that. There's even like a black dude that's like a makeup artist, and he's like flamboyantly gay and stuff. Like, this character's like that in this. They're generic as all hell. They're just there to fill up the body count, pretty much, just to have more characters to kill. There's even actors in here that I was like, whoa, is that who I think it is? Randomly Felicia Rose shows up. Is it Felicia? I think it's Felicia Rose, who at first I didn't recognize her, and then I had to look her up. I was like, oh my god, that's the girl from Sleepaway Camp, which, by the way, if you want to scare little Gore over here, you show me the final scene of Sleepaway Camp and I will shit my pants. That's it. That whole movie is not scary, I don't think. It's generic, you know, Friday the 13th kind of slasher. You know, they're at camp, everybody's getting murdered, whatever. But that final shot, no, hell no. They even make a joke about a character. Actually, I shouldn't say this. This might be a spoiler. This might be a spoiler for Sleepaway Camp. But so I'm gonna going to refrain from spoiling Sleepaway Camp, but there's a joke in here that I think is an in-joke to Sleepaway Camp. Not about her character, about a different character, but she's there in the scene. So I'm like, is that an in-joke? Maybe I'll say it at the end because I want everybody to understand what I'm talking about. But anyway, she's even in this, and she's really funny, actually. She actually does a really good job. She's like the publicist to Perry Sean's character, who, by the way, Perry Sean has been in every single Hatchet film, even the first couple where he actually gets killed in those, and they bring him back in Hatchet 2 and 3 in funny ways, very funny ways. You can immediately guess what that way is. But it's cool to see him back again. I like Perry Sean. He's good, and he's a good connection to the other ones besides, of course, Victor Crowley and some of the other characters. But he's a good connection to those, so he connects all four of them rather nicely. All the characters are, stereotypes, but they're fun to watch. The actors do a decent job for the most part. There's some bad acting here and there, but it kind of adds to the charm. And yeah, I mean, when it comes to everything that you don't go to see Hatchet movies for, it's solid. Now, what you do come to see Hatchet movies for are the kills, the blood, the gore, all that stuff. And let me tell you right here, while the movie is obviously very cheap, it's very cheap. When it comes to pretty much anything in this movie, it's all cheap looking. There's a plane set in this movie that looks absolutely ridiculous. It's like these dirty looking seats, terrible looking. It doesn't even look like a plane. Like, the interior looks terrible. And then most of the time, this movie, most of the runtime it takes place on this plane that has crashed in the middle of the swamp that Victor Crowley was in, and most of the time it's just in that plane. They're in that plane, or there's like camera shots of outside the plane, and most of the time you're not even spending time in the swamp. You're spending time in a crashed, shitty looking plane set, and it's pretty bad, but it, again, kind of adds to the charm of it because it's very cheap. Obviously, they made this one maybe even more cheaper than the other three because this one was made secretly, so there was no marketing or whatever. So they probably had to make this one on a very small budget, like even smaller than the other ones. But when it comes to the kills and the gore effects, it's still great. It might be corny and goofy, and you can tell the blood is really fake, and every time someone gets their head cut off, you just see giant squirts of blood squirting everywhere, and you can tell it's the fakest blood ever. But it's a lot of fun to watch these kills. There's a couple of really good ones that are definitely memorable. There's one involving an arm, which, by the way, there's a lot of weird things happening recently with arms, either in this or in that Cloverfield movie that just came out. A lot of weird stuff. But this one has to involve an arm going somewhere, and that's all I'm going to say. If you watch it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was brilliant. I was like, oh, bravo. That was great. It's just, perfect. 10 out of 10. Just like that Hellraiser movie recently. Which, by the way, that has a lot of weird things in it, too. So I've been watching a lot of weird films recently. And I need to, watch a nice little, like coming of age film or something, because I'm watching all these violent and weird and disturbing films. I need to slow it down. But anyway, when you come into a Hatchet film, or even any kind of horror film that is like this, a slasher horror film, you're expecting gore or at least some clever kills and stuff like that, and you definitely get it here. While the movie is definitely cheaper than all the other ones, at least you can tell. Not at least you can tell. At least that's what it looks like. It looks like it's way cheaper. And there's times where it does take a little too long to get to the whole killing part. I actually looked at the time. By the time we get to the swamp where Victor Crowley actually starts killing people, we're about 40 minutes into the film, which, by the way, the movie's only 82 minutes long, and that's if you're counting the credits. The movie actually ended after 76 minutes, so you don't get a ton of that stuff, but the same can be said for the other Hatchet films. I would say, especially the first Hatchet film, there's more amazing gore effects and kills in that one. So even though it takes a little while to get to that, I think the characters and the acting is a little bit better in that first one. And when you get to all the gore and kills and stuff, it's a little bit more impressive than this one. While this one's still a lot of fun, and if you find it on DVD or something, rent it, it's still a lot of fun. It's not as good as that first one, and I would say it's not even as good as the third one. I would say it's about on par with the second one. It's still a lot of fun, has funny moments, maybe not hilarious, but there's a couple moments where I'm just like, okay, this is goofy as hell. Like the beginning, if you can't hang with the first 5 minutes of this movie, then you're not gonna like the rest of it, so you might as well just turn it off. But if you like that first 5 minutes, you think it was goofy but fun and funny, then you're in for I guess a treat. You know, it's a treat. It's fun, and it's a nice little, I want to say an homage. I can't say shit, but homage to classic slasher films. But that's what the entire franchise was, so that's redundant. But it's a nice little return to the Hatchet franchise because it's been what, like 4 or 5 years since the last one. So, yeah. Thanks, Adam Green. It's a good time, and I'm looking forward to seeing if there's another one. You know, even if it's cheap, as long as you kill people in ridiculous ways, I'm okay with it. There's some weird moments in this movie though. Like there's one scene at a book signing that is so over the top that even when Victor Crowley later on in the movie is murdering people and shoving arms in weird places and stuff like that, that scene I keep thinking like, what? It's so weird. You most likely will know what I'm talking about, but it's strange. But the cast does a damn good job, even with some of the actors not being top notch. And there's an after credit scene that I actually really liked because I like those other movies. That's all I'll say. But there you go. That's my review. So before I end it, let me give a score. I'm gonna give it a 24 out of 40. Fun film. I really enjoyed it. It's good. That's a 6 out of 10, by the way. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. There's still, of course, problems and stuff. It takes a little while to get to where it's going, and when it gets there, it's not as satisfying as the other movies, but it's still a fun, solid 6 out of 10. Bam! Enjoyed it. All right, before I end the video, I'm just going to explain the Sleepaway Camp thing I was trying to say. All right, so at the end of Sleepaway Camp, this is spoilers for Sleepaway Camp. The review's done. You can go away now. Okay. At the end of Sleepaway Camp, this girl who's like bullied or whatever. There's a serial killer going around murdering people, and this girl who's the main character, kinda, played by Felissa Rose in Sleepaway Camp. She's bullied, whatever, yada. At the end of the movie, you find out the one that's been killing everybody in the camp has been Felissa Rose's character, but she's not a woman. She a dude. Yeah, she a dude, and the shot of her standing there with a weird looking face, just looking animalistic and terrifying, just putting nightmares in my brain. I couldn't even sleep that day when I watched that. I was like, I had to turn the lights on and shit. I was even with friends. Like I can't even say like I was by myself. You know, like use that excuse. I couldn't even. But the reason why I want to bring that up is because they make a joke in this movie about a character having a dick, even though she's a female. So I thought that was kind of funny. So it was like a little connection to the Sleepaway Camp thing. They knew they had her, so I know this doesn't mean anything. I don't even know why I brought it up. Anyway, go see Victor Crowley. Thank you. Until next time. Good night.